Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Let Me Fix This, Dom and
There we
Tom's
have it
World.
right there. Tom Tom's World. It's a special night, actually. Usually we're on a Friday night,
Yes,
but right now it is Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Tonight's a special show, Tom.
it most
Um,
definitely is.
Absolutely, and we want everyone to share, enjoy, and comment in and truly see what this show is going to be about. Um, we have our good friend Luke Robinson in. He's the Puppy Up Foundation. Um, and we're going to talk about the foundation, how it started. But Tom, give some info on what this is all about.
This is the main goal of this foundation. Of course, I mean it's fundraising, but it's all done in the name of. Sorry, I got distracted by the comment that came up.
Okay, yeah,
Hi,
okay.
Karen.
Yeah, how are
It's
you?
all done in the name of canine cancer awareness. And this man is incredible with the amount that he has walked across this country. It's just unbelievable. I complain about walking to the store.
So, and here we are, and by all means, without further ado, as I say on every show, let's bring Luke in.
Definitely.
Good evening,
Hey, Luke.
gentlemen. How are you?
All right. How are
Hi,
you?
Excellent.
how are you? I do want to say I appreciate you coming on and being a part of this. We know this story is a strong one, and we're going to respect you in every way and share you out and share your story because of what it's about. So let's just start from there. The Puppy Up Foundation, Luke. Tell us right from the beginning.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. So this all began with my first Great Pyrenees, Fuzzy Butt number one, Malcolm. And I got to start out by saying I wasn't really a dog guy. I hadn't had a dog in my adult life. I grew up with them, like any family in Texas, but I hadn't had one in my adult life. And I had an ex-girlfriend call me up one day and asked me if I wanted a puppy. And I swear to God, Dom, I said no. I said no, I don't. I work hard, I play hard. I'm one of those kind of guys,
Right.
and just didn't have time for it. But she was a nice girlfriend of mine, and she's very, very, very pretty. And somehow, I think I said yes, and I ended up with a Great Pyrenees puppy. And I don't know if you know the breed of Great Pyrenees, but there's a famous saying that they're very independent minded. They're an independent breed, which basically is translated down south that they're stubborn some bitches. I didn't know this when I first got Malcolm. But sure enough, I ended up with him. He was just a couple of months old, and whatever I said, he did the exact opposite of that. And I liken it to sort of the physics concept of what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force. I mean, man, we butted heads from day one. And it's interesting thinking back on it now. I actually tried to give Malcolm up. I called him my ex-girlfriend. And I'm like, no, I don't want this in my life. I don't need it. Don't want, don't need. And she said, I'm sorry, it's done. The deal is done. So I think I called my parents. I'm like, hey, you guys want a puppy? And so I got denied. And yet I ended up with him. And just after a few months, he broke me. Malcolm broke me. And I golf. And I took him. He rode shotgun in my golf cart. Man, he was my activity partner. Anywhere I would go, Malcolm went with me. And
Right.
I never, before Malcolm, I don't know about you guys, Dom and Tom, but before Malcolm, I had never had sort of a spiritual connection with an animal, dog, anything in my life. I didn't really ever think that was possible. That sort of spiritual connection.
I actually have, and that's why this is so relatable. With a lot of with just a lot going on. I mean, but this story is not about me. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, spiritual connection with an animal, 100%, my friend.
I've
Yeah,
always been a dog
Dom,
man.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I've always been a dog man, so I can relate. I've gotten very close to some of the dogs that I've had,
Yeah,
and it was definitely spiritual connection, especially with a beagle I had who was very hyperactive. She was the canine version of me, pretty much.
uh,
And
Yeah, well, Dom, it is all of our story. That's the whole point of the two walks that I've done before, and this one coming up, walk 3, is that it started with Malcolm's story, then Murphy is the second walk, and now Hudson's story. But it is about all of the companions we've had that we've lost, from cancer we've lost. It's about the power of companionship.
Sure.
And that was Malcolm, and I didn't know that. I didn't understand the power of companionship before I had Malcolm. But he broke me, and man, I realized real quick, I started worrying about bloat. Became obsessed with bloat. It was like every day I was like, let me just check the belly and make sure it's not distended. And every time he would hack up, I'm like, that's the golden telltale sign of bloat. I'm down my whole day. And it was really weird. I don't have children, and I never had human children. And I don't know if just having a dog before that just somehow just sent me off in a strange direction. But I fell in love with Malcolm to the extent that he was my boy. He was like my son. And so I was living in Texas at the time, and I had a management consulting business in the high tech and biotech industry. And my girlfriend and I moved up to Boston with Malcolm, and by that time, another girlfriend had given me another Pyrenees, Murphy. Somehow I have a long history of ex-girlfriends giving me dogs. I lost
Same
the girls.
breed.
Yeah, I lost the girls but kept the dogs. I don't know how that worked out, but I came out ahead. I feel like so.
I was just about to say.
Yep. I came out ahead in that deal. So I moved up with Malcolm and Murphy up to Boston, and I wasn't even there 6 months before Malcolm began limping, and I thought it was. I certainly had. At the time, I had no idea. This is back in 2004. I had no idea that dogs even got cancer, and it was the last thing that was on my mind, or I wasn't even thinking about it. And so I took him to the vet. I was living in Watertown, Mass, and took him to the vet. And he did a radiograph, an X-ray, and took one look. And he's like, "Yep, it's bone cancer." And that one thing just changed my world. And that lightning second of a moment, it just changed everything. And I didn't know at that time exactly how my life was changed. I just knew that I wanted to know why and how. I had done, by that time, Malcolm was 6, so he was young, or what I thought was young for a dog. And so, my immediate thought was, how the hell did he get cancer at this age? And I did everything right, because by that time, I prepared his own meals for him. I was basically his mother and his father at the same time, and sort of took care of him like a nursemaid and some sort of weird Ozzie and Harriet sort of way. And so I thought in my mind, I did everything right. I did everything that the veterinarians and the experts told me to do. And yet Malcolm still got cancer. And so I just knew, I didn't know how at the time. I just knew that I was going to find out why. So flash forward, after that diagnosis, we did what's called the gold standard of care. We did amputation. So we amputated his front limb, and followed up by chemo. And we got almost 2 years. He did great. I don't know, have either of you seen, or do you have experience with a 3-legged dog?
Through friends, yes, but not a personal within my nature. So yes.
Good. Well, the one traveling with me on walk 3, he's a 3-legged Pyrenees. By other means, his was neglect and abuse, but I had no idea. I'd never had any experience with a 3-legged dog. So when we did amputation, Malcolm was 125 pounds. He was a big boy. And
it is big.
Took off his front leg. It was just traumatic. I was like, wow. It's almost like they quartered him. We have a storm in the background here, gentlemen, and that's scared Grayson.
It's okay. You're all right.
That scared Grayson. He might bark. It's okay, buddy. So I was thinking, man, how is he ever going to walk? How is he going to function normally? But I got to tell you, gentlemen, within I would say less than a week, Malcolm was back hopping around on his three limbs.
Wow.
He was treeing squirrels. Good friends of mine at Tripods, they have a saying that God made dogs three-legged and gave him a spare limb, and I think that's true. And it also speaks to the nature of our companions, the spirit and the power of our companions, is that they have a will to live, even in cancer. So I know I'm going a long way to tell the story of our foundation, but all this for me was my first experience with the love of a companion animal, the power of that love, and then how that love was challenged at such a young age with the diagnosis of cancer, and then
Horrible.
and then in less than 2 years, the cancer spread to his lungs, which 90% of cases of bone cancer do that, and then unfortunately we had to give him rest. And so at that time I just knew in one way I was going to devote the rest of my life to trying to understand what took him from me and why.
Yeah.
Wow.
And thinking back on my past dogs, think you didn't give up. Like it was in a lot of. I know a lot of people say, well, you spend a lot of money, you just put the dog down. No, you don't just do that. They are now your family and your buddy. Like you're gonna spend your very last bit of cash to make sure this animal's okay. I mean, it's family from there. I've seen it. I mean, I've watched my family. I watched my father do it. I watched, me do it. I did everything I could to keep the dogs alive because they were just, they were blood, So I
Literally
get
our family.
So this is actually a heart-wrenching one for me. So if anyone tears up here, it's okay. So, I mean, I get it. I get it.
It's all right. We can cry together, the three of us.
Yeah, man.
It's just the 3 men of us all here.
That's right.
But
the internet.
There's also, Dom, though, there's also, in addition to that, there's also, I think, an emotional and spiritual reason why you should do whatever, expend every mean and every resource to keep your companion alive. But there's also a medical and scientific benefit as well, because there's just such a lack of data out there. There's a parity out there, actually, because on the one hand, there's a very large population of dogs that get cancer. We think around 4 million dogs, new cases of cancer in dogs every year. Even the experts, some of them say it's higher, some of them say it's lower. We don't really know, but I think 4 million new cases of cancer in dogs in the United States alone is a pretty good conservative number. So it's a big problem. That's a pandemic. We have a pandemic in our companion animals, and that's it. And that's another reason why Walk 3 is so important. It's like, yes, we have COVID, and that's a very important and pandemic for us to pay attention to, and more importantly, allocate our resources. But we can't forget about the pandemic. It's a scourge that's killing our companion animals. Some breeds, upwards to 50 to 60% of them will die from cancer. So it's a big, big problem.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question here.
Yes,
this one actually hits pretty tough with me. Oh, shit. I told my mom not to do that, and she did. So let me ask you something about here. Medications that are given to these animals. Do you think that's a big cause of it, that everything is not researched enough and they're pushing out all these medications to, like, say, flea medications and shit like that? That is actually kind of causing some of this shit. And I said I wasn't going to curse, but my mom actually, she messed me up on that one.
A good 80% of my life is spent with cancer and dogs, and I get emails, stories, I get messages on Facebook, through social media, so many stories that you can't help but every once in a while just say shit. I just you throw up your hands and it's part of it. So I've actually said a lot worse, which I try to keep to myself. I don't even like to cuss around my kids, my fuzzy butts. I cover their ears. But to answer your question, though, it's a great question. So we like to think of it in terms of risk factors. What are the risk factors of cancer in animals? Because science has taught us one thing, and this is important. This is what our message is primarily, is that we don't think, and we shouldn't think of cancer in terms of human cancer and dog cancer. There is a school of thought now that's being adopted more and more, and it will become the dominant school of thought in cancer research. It's called one cancer, and it means we know this: that cancer is a cross species disease. Cancer can be found in canines, felines, and snowcats, snow leopards, and boa constrictors get bone cancer. I think in the rabbit population, lymphoma I think is very, very high. So cancer is a cross species disease, and we share an ecosystem. So the question that I like to pose to people when they think of cancer is that, why is it that dogs are getting the exact same types of cancer that people get? Dogs get. I mean, not only do dogs get the same types of cancer, but it also looks the same underneath the microscope. And in many cases, it behaves the same way. Bone cancer is a great example because it in 90% of the cases, it spreads to the lungs. Breast cancer is another example. So we're talking about cancer, guys. We're not talking about dog cancer or canine cancer versus human cancer. Cancer is cancer. And that's becoming the theme, the dominant theme now in oncology research. So our foundation, the Puppy Up Foundation, it's important for us to point out that we fund what's called translational or comparative oncology research. The studies that we do are clinical trial type studies where the dogs are the patients that benefit from the therapy or the treatment or the medical device in some cases. But with the hope that the treatment or therapy that then can be taken into human clinical trials and benefit people. So the way we think of it at the Puppy Up Foundation is that the research that we benefit, the research that we fund benefits both pets and people. So that's an important distinction that we like to get out there. But to answer your question in terms of risk factor, go back to that because it's very, very important. What are the risk factors of cancer in dogs and other companion animals and species? Well, they're really the same risk factors in people, other than behavioral cancers, like obviously like liver cancer from alcohol intake or lung cancer from smoking and so on and so forth. So the primary risk factors that we think of in canine cancer, comparative oncology, especially in terms of dogs and their ecosystem, their environment, are pesticides, lawn chemicals, because that's one of their big environments. There is a school of thought out there that believes multiple vaccinations could be causing cancer in animals. I'll tell you this, though. We tend to think of cancer as a disease of old age, but it's certainly not the case in dogs. We know it's not the case in humans. Pediatric oncology, we see kids in cancer in kids all the time.
I want to stand by you on that one 100% because of what I went through. But mine wasn't through like the cancers. Mine was through seizures within the animals. And it was clearly shown that I had a first dog that went through seizures. He took a flea medication. Second flea medication, I had a dog right from the West Coast, took the same damn medication, had seizures his entire life. It stemmed from the medication. And that's why I had brought that up. And the vet was too hungry in his own pocket to admit that those medications mess it up. I mean, we spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to keep this dog alive, and every penny was spent knowing it kept our boy alive. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I really feel these medications need to be researched more. Because if you think of the old school, you hear the old timers bring it up. You know, there was none of these flea. We washed them in the yard. None of this was going on. Like, and all of a sudden, all these new medications are coming out. Dogs are getting sick in ways that no one's ever seen before. I mean, these dogs I knew from like my my grandparents, they were running the streets and were always fine. Lived a long, happy life. So I don't. This dumbfounds me because I think a lot of this needs to be researched more. And
I completely understand what you're saying, your sentiment entirely. Hudson, the one I just lost recently, he's had a kind of a 10-year battle or history of mast cell cancer, which is it's cancer of mast cells are part of the immune system, which are part of the allergy or allergic response. And so he's had a life. He had I still speak from the present tense. He had a lifelong history of allergies, really bad allergies. And I've tried to mitigate them therapeutically. It's always been at the risk of potentially causing or making his mast cell cancer and mast cell tumors worse. And recently, even though he was 15 or I think 14, I think is when we administered, I think, the first dose. I decided to try to control his allergies, and I tried something that was recommended safe for his condition. And shortly thereafter, he had multiple tumors, mast cell tumors. So, in my mind, that should have been contraindicated. So, not to press too far into that matter specifically,
sure.
I can assure you there's just a lot more research, just across the board, more research needs to be done. But to look at both sides and keep a proper context, I mean, on the one hand, as a pet parent, I'm always wanting the next latest arrow in my quiver of therapeutics of oncology or cancer therapeutics, because because animal oncology is still, I would say, probably a good decade, maybe more so behind human oncology in terms of the treatments that are available to us
Right.
for use in our canine companions. And so, from as pet parents' perspective, I look at drug companies and just say, guys, the sooner you can get a human cancer drug that shows any indication or any degree of success in the human market, then let's whatever we can do it to get it to the animal market as quickly as possible. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we do so. That comes at the expense of how much research or how much additional testing is necessary, because comparative oncology is based on one notion, that the dog organism is comparable to the human organism. They're very, very comparable, but there are differences, and sometimes those differences have consequences. So it's a tough issue. I can just say that. But we also look at other risk factors too, and that's also important. In addition to potential long chemicals, potential therapeutics, multiple vaccinations, we look at diet, nutrition. That's very, very important. And I cannot underemphasize the importance of that. I think at our website, the Puppy F Foundation, we have links to proper nutrition. And certainly if your dog has cancer, a good cancer diet, that's extremely important in humans and also in our companion counterparts. So those are really the primary risk factors that we look at. History of cancer as well. I mean, that's the reality. Cancer is in our DNA. And that's a big problem. That's true in humans and been very true in dogs.
Well, going along the bottom of the screen for anyone joining us, watching, and will tune in the future, that's your organization. That's the website. Go in there, check it out. A lot of helpful information in there, including donations, whatever you need to do to help this move forward. If nothing else, at least share it out. Just to keep the movement going. Luke is one amazing person, and working very hard, and is determined to get this across his subject, and I really appreciate him for that. Now let's talk about the walk.
The third walk or the second walk? The first walk was Austin to Boston. That was 2,300 miles. That was for Malcolm. Then one of the dogs that walked with, that was the two dogs that walked with me, Hudson and Murphy. This is important. This is part of our story. And kind of this is important not only from the foundation's history, but it's also important, I believe, because I think the third walk really does take our story in full circle and brings everything together. So after I lost Malcolm, the first walk from Austin to Boston, that was 2,300 miles. And then we got to Boston. Hudson and Murphy and I got to Boston in June of 2010. And I went out to Colorado to work with my editor at the time on the book. We wanted to tell the story of the Austin to Boston walk and the story of Malcolm. Which is really what the first walk was all about. It was just walking from town to town, telling Malcolm's story. Along the way, we met Ginger Morgan, our director, and when we got to Boston, we put together the Puppy Up Foundation. And so we got to Boston. We were planning our first series of Puppy Up walks, and just within less than a month or two, Murphy, one of the two Pyrenees that walked with me, he started bleeding out of his nose, and we thought it might have been an infection or a cold or something. It was a very long walk. We walked 2,300 miles. It was over 2 years we were on the road, so we had lots of nights in the tent. So unfortunately, it didn't resolve. We did antibiotics, and so I took him out to Colorado State University, and it turned out he had nasal cancer. So in a really tragic, sad irony, one of the dogs that just walked cross country for canine cancer awareness was diagnosed with cancer. And unfortunately, the tumor was so big in his sinus cavity that it was inoperable. So we did radiation treatment over a month, a very low dose radiation called IMRT. And then we got on the speaker circuit. We traveled a bit. And anyway, within 4 months, it became apparent that the radiation failed, and we had another tumor. The radiation actually caused a secondary tumor in his nasopharynx. So then we did a very massive 3-day course of radiation, and it all failed, and he didn't really make it a year. So that was a very dark time on my travels, to say the least.
I can imagine,
because it was so it's hard to say when you embark on a journey what you really want out of it. What is the outcome you really want out of it? And I really didn't know when I left with Hudson and Murphy from Austin back in 2008. I just hope we got there safely, and thank God we did. But we had lots of close calls on the road. But I thought we'd get to Boston, and then we'd start the foundation, and then I would write the book, and we'd tell our story. And then Murphy got cancer, and then I was like, well, I don't know what the story is anymore. And that's important because I got a number of offers from some book companies to tell the story, to write the book. And I just said, I don't really have an ending now. I don't know what the story is now. It wasn't supposed to be this way. So we lost Murphy, but shortly thereafter, I adopted Indiana. He's fuzzy butt number 4. That's right. He's fuzzy butt number 4. Wow. And yep, this is important. So then I had Indiana and Hudson, and in 2014, I decided to walk in honor to do a Murphy walk. And what I decided to do was, my first walk was on the East Coast. It was from Austin to Boston. So a lot of people said, hey, why don't you come out to the West Coast? Why don't you come out there? And so I decided to do that. And so in 2014, Hudson and Indiana and I left Canada. And so we walked the entire length of the West Coast from Canada to Mexico. That was 1,700 miles over about 7 months and some change. And that was Murphy's walk. So at that time, I had walked with my dogs 4,000 miles, which is 1/6 the circumference of the Earth. And I like to say it because it does make me feel like I've done something. It makes me feel good.
It,
I
it
mean,
is something to be proud of.
like 1/6 around the Earth circumference of the Earth. It's a lot.
It's incredible.
Not many
So
people can say that.
we had talked on the phone a little bit, before this entire conversation. Explain the entire walk. The from the start to finish. Like what goes on, like in the stop times, the money, all that. Like what does Luke go through in these walks?
Well, the first one, wow, the first one really was a leap of faith. I didn't have any organization. I just had a few people that I'd met online after going through Malcolm, some very nice, big-hearted people that kind of helped me along and helped send food and supplies because our walks are the real deal. We basically have all the supplies we carry with us. So my dogs have their backpacks. I carry a backpack. We're self-sustainable for about 3 to 4 days on the road, depending upon how quickly we can get resupplied. So we really just walk from town to a post office to post office and resupply. And now the more publicity we got, we had people that would sometimes pick us up off the road and take us to get supplies and drop us back off, and so where we started and so on and so forth. And it became more organized. But man, on the first walk, Dom and Tom, to tell you the truth, there were times where I only had like a couple of bucks. We had a couple of really great sponsors. Badiana's Kitchen was a great sponsor in my first walk. And they provided the food for the Fuzzy Butts, Hudson and Murphy, and some treats. And we had a couple other sponsors. I'd stopped working when Malcolm's cancer spread, so I didn't have a lot. I wasn't sitting on a big pile of cash, and I put everything, sold my truck, put my stuff in the storage, and put everything into the gear I had. And so I only had a couple of $100, and there was a time where I had $20, and I just was walking. I'm like, well, if I'm gonna have to stop and just work at a fast food joint or a convenience store or whatever for a week, that's what we'll have to do. And I tell you, every time, Dom, every single time, somebody would stop and just say, here's $20, or here's a $5, and that would get us to the next town.
That's
and then
why I brought that up. That's exactly why I just brought that up from that conversation. I remember you saying that someone would stop and they believed in what you're doing. I mean, that's a beautiful situation right there, my friend.
I think it is, Dom, and I think I think it has to do with the fact that I had Hudson and Murphy, my two dogs. I think that is the great social fabric. I've talked to so many people who have traveled, but have traveled without companions, dogs. Some people have actually traveled with cats and little carriers and so on and so forth. But they've had bad experiences, and for the most part, my travels have been the exact opposite. They've been very, very good, very positive, rewarding, inspirational experiences. And I think that I know that's entirely attributable to walking with my boys. But you're right. It's just a great thing for sure. And to me, people don't really have a good understanding, I think, of the moral character of our country. I don't think, and I don't think I ever did. And I think I lose sight of that when I'm off the road. I know I do, because you watch TV, you get disconnected from people. But when you get out there on the road, Dom, when you meet people and they stop and they say, "Here, I don't have cash, but here's a cup of coffee on a cold day," or here's some kibble for your puppy dog, or some treats or something like that. I mean, it just makes you want to cry. I'm almost getting choked up right now. It makes you feel.
Okay. It's good. I mean, a pot of water for the dogs to drink. I mean, I get it. I mean, this travel, it had to be just not just a soul search, but I mean, it had to be something. I don't even know how to explain the words. Like an out of body experience is how I would put it. Like you get to connect with animals, connect with the world, see communities, see good people. As you walk this entire journey, and then you leave with a memory that most people will go to the grave, will never do what you did and are going to do and accomplish. My friend, I mean, this is something big.
Um, it is. I love and I miss. I can't wait for walkthrough. I really can't wait from a spiritual perspective to get back on the road because to me, there's nothing like being in a tent at night, underneath stars, underneath this great gift that we're all given with your companion. It's chilly outside. You're spooning your hairy, stinky, puppy dog, and you're tired from a long day's walk and everything. It's just magical. It truly is magical and spiritual. And I miss it, and I can't wait to be back on the road. And I think that's just something that really resounds so powerfully with a lot of people. So that was it's interesting. It is interesting, and it's hard for me to tell the story, but I'm going to. It's important for me to note that we're doing a documentary of all of this. We're doing a docuseries somehow, some way. We're filming it in many different ways. We're putting it together. I was just up in your neck of the woods shooting a trailer for sizzle reel for the streaming companies. We're going to be doing a docu-series and kind of filming every aspect of this from start to finish. So everybody's going to be a part of it.
Great.
But part of the story, and I do have to point this out, is that was the first walk. That was the Austin to Boston walk. The West Coast walk really was quite different, and it's I still can't make sense of it, and I don't understand it. Throughout the entire state, almost the entire West Coast, we only had maybe a dozen people that actually stopped us and helped us out on the entire West Coast, 1,700 miles. Yeah. And the state of Washington, we had nobody. Oregon, we had someone. Now, we had supporters that had found out about us along the way or through social media. Don't get me wrong. Again, it's so hard for me to tell the story because we met so many wonderful people on the West Coast, and I never want to sound negative. But it was the West Coast walk was like the polar opposite of the East Coast.
It truly is.
And in so many different
world.
ways. And I thought it would be, I was so naive, and I didn't even scout the West Coast. And I was so naive to so many different, I just thought, God, it's just an animal loving community. It's going to be just great. But it wasn't. And in that respect. And more importantly, and this is also important and important to the story about the third walk, which is what we're preparing for right now and what we're announcing here on your show tonight. Is that the West Coast walk? It was so dangerous. Have you guys done the PCH at all? We did. Yes. I don't know if you knew this. We did.
I did my college years out in California, so yeah, the PCH.
So you know the PCH.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 101. Yeah, we did not do just to make it clear. We did not do the PCT, the trail. We did roads. So we did the 101 the entire way. And there are some gnarly switchbacks, as you know, and stuff. Man, there are times we almost and we walked at a time where it was like travel season, tourist season. So there was, RVs, boaters, and just big rigs and stuff. And they're logging from, the entire coastline of Oregon. You've got trucks with logging trucks up and down those roads and stuff. So man, every week we were talking about within inches of almost getting hit. Not to mention, like in California, everybody's texting while they're driving in California. So the West Coast was exceedingly dangerous, and it was so bad, gentlemen, man. Nights in the tent, my hands would shake. There are stories that I still really haven't told about the West Coast. So that was 2014. I did that walk. So it will be 8 years since I've been on the road. And I got to tell you, one of the reasons why is because the West Coast walk scared the hell out of me. We had a lot of close calls out there. So walk 3, training and doing preparation for, we're going to be doing a lot of it because we were just, like I said, up there along the Hudson River, scouting the potential areas we'll be walking through, just trying to see the circumstances that we'll be confronted with because some of those roads are pretty hairy up there.
Did you get to spend some time on the beach in California, like spend the night on the water? Like with
I did. You know, what I didn't know was that the difference between the West Coast and Washington, Oregon, and North California down to Central California, which basically the beach is inaccessible for most of it because you're basically it's like where the mountains meet the seas, right?
Right.
So basically where we were walking, we were always like 100 feet up from the actual Pacific Ocean. You know, there were certain areas there were areas along the way, but you get down to Southern California, you're on the beach all the time. But I got to tell you, Dom, we had so many nights. We just find a grove of trees, like a promontory overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and it was just magical. I mean, whereas we didn't have as much human interaction and success. I guess success is relative. I guess what I would think as interaction and engagement with people from the education and awareness standpoint on the West Coast, it was just unbelievably spectacular. It was beautiful. I have like tens of thousands of photos of
really
us.
West Coast.
Awesome.
I spent so much time there. I absolutely love the West Coast. I love the desert. I spent time in the Ventura, Apple Valley area. And then, you know, the desert would be the Apple Valley and Victorville, but Ventura is where I went to school. So I was on the beach all the time. I mean, we had just a good time on the West Coast, and it's a whole different feel on the East Coast, as you said. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure the scenery you got to see along your journey is just huge to the story, my friend. You should actually write a book about this.
Well, we're actually that's good that you mentioned because this actually you brought it back. It was a great segue. You brought it all back to the third walk 3, because this is important because the first walk was the Rock, was Malcolm. He was the guy that started this whole thing. He changed me, and I like to think about he was the rock that became the ripple, which was the foundation, the ripple that we made this grassroots movement that we sort of built from our Austin to Boston walk, and sort of Murphy, the West Coast walk, was sort of the ripple of it. And now I think of our story becoming the third part of the story. Then the book that I'm writing is called The Rock, the Ripple, and the River. And I've been working on that, like as I said before, just a little while ago, is that I kind of lost the story. I didn't know how to tell the story after I lost Murphy. Just didn't know how to tell it. And even after the West Coast walk, I still didn't know. But I knew I wanted to tell it about the Rock and the Ripple. And I knew the third chapter, the third part of my story needed to be the river. But to tell you the truth, I had absolutely no idea what the hell the river would be about. It scared the hell out of me. And so the river really is about my own personal journey. It's about the river of life. And I got to tell you, I'm still not there, but I'm a lot closer there now this year than I've ever been in my life. And so I'm at that point where I can do this walk. That scratching in the background is Grayson. He's actually the star of the show. I was hoping he'll come around here. I'll
show him up here.
Well, hopefully he's over there doing something. I'll get him over here in a minute.
What's happening?
But so to me, it's just trail magic that Hudson was named after the Hudson Valley and the Hudson River, and that walk 3 will be taken on from the origin of the Hudson River down to the end of the Hudson River, and we'll bring the story together. The Rock, Malcolm, Ripple, Murphy, and the foundation, and the river that is Hudson, the river of life. Because I got to tell you, I have suffered deeply, and I have not suffered well, and it's been tough for me, and that's also one of the reasons why I have not been able to tell my story. And I'll be talking a lot about this in the docuseries, and I hope that it's our plan that a book that the Rock, the Ripple, and the River will come out of this in book form, and will be the docuseries. I'm not sure if that will be the title of the docuseries, but it will be the story of the Rock, the Ripple, and the River, because I had a hard time after going through Murphy. It was tough for me, and for years, my path was dark and unclear, and I felt lost. And also what I wanted to achieve with the foundation, because it's been tough. The foundation, it's been tough because you have to understand how veterinary oncology works. It's a relatively small community, and we have a very large population of dogs with cancer. And so you have a lot of dogs out there that just aren't getting the treatment that they need. And then you have a lot of pet parents out there that can't afford cancer care. And so it's tough to try to address that disparity. And then more importantly, set aside, invest money into research in comparative oncology, especially when you have some people out there that have kids with cancer.
Right.
I've had so many events where we've had parents come up and say, "I love your cause, it's great, but your dogs with cancer, and I have a niece that has lymphoma, and my money goes to that." And so it's part of my job to let them know that dogs also get lymphoma. In certain breeds, lymphoma is the number one type of cancer they get. So that's part of my job out there. So for me, I kind of see that, for me personally, that this walk 3 along the Hudson River is sort of the life lesson I guess I've needed. It's kind of funny and ironic. On the first walk, I met a great guy from Pittsburgh. He was the editor of the home and garden section of the Pittsburgh Gazette. Great guy. And we were talking about telling the story, and he said, every great story, I guess hero journey or story, whatever he said, requires that the hero, his character, has to arc. And I'm like, I don't really know how my character is going to arc throughout this. I guess that's something you can't plan out when you start a journey. You don't really set out and go, I wonder how I'm going to change. I guess maybe the only thing I thought about was I was hoping that my heart would heal. I just was hoping personally that I would heal after it. And I remember dancing around a fire. I was walking through alongside the Yakagani River, and I'd stopped and gotten a bottle of wine at the local packy store, and had a campfire, got some sweet corn out of a field that night. I'd put the fuzzy butts to bed, and I was just sort of reflecting on the day's walk, and I was dancing around the fire, just screaming in the night, just arc, and then and I thought about that. I'm like, I never really understood truly what that meant, but I understand now that for me to truly honestly tell the story of the rock, the ripple, and the river, and to be able to do this walk, tell my story honestly, is to be able to talk about suffering and the dark side of my travels and my journey, and that I have overcome that, and it's tough for me to speak about now because I just lost Hudson. We're just going on a little over 2 months now, coming to
Wow.
3 months, I guess, coming up. And it was very unexpected. We had known that his cancer had metastasized, but we thought that we would have a more favorable outcome with the chemotherapy. But there were some decisions that were made, or some things that were not overlooked, I think, in retrospect and hindsight, that I think gave us a very unfavorable outcome from the chemo. He had a bad reaction to it, and so I thought we'd have more time with Hudson. And I'm going to be doing a podcast and sort of a blog about this. It's still very tough for me to talk about, but it's been a couple of months now, and I'm able to do it without crying all the time. But for me, it's really changed going through that has kind of changed my perspective in so many ways about a lot of things. So and also in dealing with suffering, and it's the first time I've sort of dealt with suffering in a different way. And I'll elaborate more on this throughout as we document this for the docuseries. But to kind of bring it back and to not belabor the point about it, because I'm still learning about it. It's all come together so fast, and for me to sit back and go, wow, it's just so metaphoric how to paint it for you perfectly. I was just only 2 weeks ago, I went to the origin of the Hudson River up in the Adirondacks. Have either of you guys been up there? It's kind of Newcomb, New York, Henderson Lake area. Have you guys been up there?
I have not. No.
It's absolutely just south of Lake Placid, so it's absolutely stunning up there. And for me, it was so powerful because it was so beautiful. And I'm not sure if you've seen pictures of Hudson, but he was such a beautiful boy, man. He you just look at his eyes; it was just poetry, it was beauty, and it was a kind of smile that there was absolutely no way that you could think negatively or pessimistically or think or see things from a dark side of life. He was that beautiful, and I wanted a walk that would reflect that beauty. And so how it's come together, I'm still trying to even write in words. And if you go to the HudsonRiverWalk.org and look at it, sort of brochure where now we're building that out. But I was trying to write the content for it, and I still have such a hard time with it because it's still so powerful and so new. It's only 2 weeks ago being there at the origin of the Hudson River and feeling what it was like. And so it's all coming together so beautifully. And so this show is the first time we've made this announcement. That's what's so great about this. It's so raw. This emotion is so raw. I'm sorry that I don't have the sound bites ready to go.
Absolutely, Luke. And I'm going to throw this option out to you. No matter what, when you decide to do your podcast, you have full access to BB3 TV at any time you want. We can make you an editor in here. You can literally post out your foundations. Anything you have to put on there as far as anything you do, we'll make this happen. As far as tomorrow, you could post inside BB3 TV, and we will have your back every step of the way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Every step of the way. I caught that.
Well, I was going to ask you is that when I'm on the road next year, this time, the plan is we'll launch no matter what. We'll launch September 4th of 2022. And the plan is arrive in New York City on the Brooklyn side of the Brooklyn Bridge for the final mile in November 4th. But so we'll be on the road for 2 months. What I'd love to do is be able to maybe call in or from the road from our phone and be able to say, hey, we're here, up in the Adirondacks. We're about to launch. Can we do that from the road?
As you're an editor in there, you could go live anytime you want. You do not need Tom or myself anymore. You literally will have full access to our entire site, and you do what you want on there.
So be kind of like a little puppy up radio within your BB3 TV.
Definitely.
You do what you need to do.
And then once you have your docuseries all set and everything, we can definitely promote it like crazy.
That's great, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Again, we were talking about it before we went live. We were talking about it, and I want to reiterate it or kind of bring it back into the discussion about trail magic. And I truly was, my good friend Carrie brought us together, and he's been a part of my journey, of Malcolm's journey, and Hudson and Murphy's journey from the very beginning, and he brought us together. So it's trail magic that we met, and now thank you for extending that very generous offer for us to use this platform to talk about the Hudson River Walk. Thank you guys very much.
Oh, that's not a problem. I do have a question though. One that came up, but I just didn't have the right time to insert it with how we were going through things. I know that sometimes some breeds of dog are more susceptible to maybe a specific cancer or just cancer in general. Was that the case because you had two of the same breed of dogs that wound up with two different types of cancer? Is it that they're more susceptible to it, or was it just coincidence?
I think I'm cursed. I have 3 for 3 Pyrenees with cancer. I have 2 now that don't, knock on wood. But it's a great question, Tom. In fact, it's such an important question because we were talking about risk factors, and what I didn't mention was just predisposition, because there are certain breeds that are predisposed to certain types of cancers. Large breeds in general, larger giant breeds in general, are predisposed to bone cancers. We see lymphoma often in golden retrievers. Golden retrievers, we think 60% of them now will die from cancer. It's very, very common in that breed. Whereas like American bulldogs, we'll see more tumors. My first one, Malcolm, was bone cancer. Second one was nasal adenocarcinoma. which interestingly enough, we're seeing a lot of nasal cancers now in Great Pyrenees, oddly enough. And then the third one, Hudson, just passed away from mast cell tumors, mast cell cancer, which you see that in a lot of different breeds. But you have like Westies will have bladder cancer. So certain breeds are predisposed to certain types of cancers. Absolutely, Tom. Great point.
Oh, well, thank you. I try, you know.
You did your research.
That was just off the top of my head.
Hey, Dom, yes. Tom did his research. Did you do yours?
No. and I'll tell you why. I think it's more organic with a conversation. I never research anything. Actually, with any network I'm with or any kind of guest, I literally...
I respect that.
I do it all organic, and I learn. I would rather learn from you than me asking you a whole bunch of Google questions I looked up that day.
I meet a lot of people in my travels, and that's precisely how I learn. That's a lot of how I learn, actually. It's just by talking and asking questions and being curious, which you guys clearly are curious and interested in this, and that's great.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, like I said, we're like, not only that, we know what you're doing is good. So every host within BB3 TV or any kind of content that we put up, whether you're a band, artist, we want to do the right thing for all content, because you're hard workers. You believe in what you do. I mean, this is just not a whole, we don't put anything up that if you're not working hard at it, you don't have no part of BB3 TV. Every content artist here, including yourself, puts their heart into what they do. And that's what BB3 is about. We want variety entertainment, and we want to show, that artists, entertainers are still out there. And, we want to show that you have a chance, that we all have a chance. I mean, we don't make any money on this. We do it because we love it. I mean, we're with the Grave Guys, as I'm about to put up there right now as a banner. Craig and I, myself, we go out and we clean graves on the weekends for Grave Guys TikToks. I mean, hit us up on there. Tom, throw that banner up there real quick. But we throw 18, we clean military graves. Little kids, been gone hundreds of years. Their graves look like hell. And when we get in there, we do our treatments. We do things because we love it, and we don't ask nothing from it other than just the appreciation of how hard that we all work to make this happen, and that's why we like you, Luke. We really, really appreciate you.
That's, when I started the first walk in 2008, there just wasn't a lot of awareness and education out there. And I just thought, if I just walk from town to town and put myself out there and just and risk myself and risk my life, and to a certain extent the life of my companions to a certain extent, although I took a lot of, I trained a lot and will train, and there is risk in what we do, but we spend and will be spending a lot of time training. If you guys want to talk about that, happy to do that. But I thought if people saw that, then people would pay attention, and people say, this is something to pay attention to, and it's real. And they do. And I think what you said is exactly that, is that if you're not putting your blood, sweat, and tears, and putting everything out there, risking everything out there, then what are you doing for your cause, for what you believe in? Then what the hell are you doing? I'm a first in, last out kind of guy. I'm all in what I do. I'm all in Puppy Up. Puppy Up will be here. COVID has hit us as a foundation. It's been tough for us as a foundation, because our main way of fundraising has been Puppy Up walks. We have like Susan Komen style dog walks all around the country. Sure. And COVID kind of put a stop to that. So please, go to puppyup.org and donate if you can. And certainly,
Ginger had just said it. My mom's going to donate, and we're going to put the donations up on our site as well.
Thank you.
And if you can't donate, at least share out the link.
And I do want to get this in. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, and if you guys need to let me know how we're doing on time, but I do want to get this in though.
Yeah, we've got about another minute or two, but we could move on as far as you want. So you got a solid good minute or two.
Let me get this in there, because we tonight I'm announcing the walk, the Hudson River Walk is what we'll be doing. It's about 300. It's less than 400 miles. I don't know the exact route. I wasn't able to scout everything, so it's going to be a work in progress. But it's less than 400 miles we'll be doing. The website is hudsonriverwalk.org. It's a blog. It's just up there right now. We'll be adding video content. We'll have a YouTube channel. But the announcements, we've got a lot of things going on with this, guys, and I will be coming back on, or however we figure out how to do this through BB3 TV. Is there a couple of announcements? We're not quite ready yet, but we're going to be launching a new initiative and program through the Puppy Up Foundation, specifically in honor of memory of Hudson. And it's something new we're doing. We're also looking into new research as well. We've got lots of new exciting things going on with Puppy Up. So you could also just go to puppyup.org. If you want to learn more about the foundation, you could donate there. But definitely to stay in tune and current with what's going on about Walk 3, the hudsonriverwalk.org, or actually the website is hudsonriverwalk.org. Yeah. And we'll let you know when we have our YouTube channel live and up with that as well. So, thank you guys for any help with the fundraising aspect. We'll be around. It doesn't matter. Puppy Up will always be around. This is as long as I'm alive, I will continue to walk for this cause. I'll be out there putting myself at risk, giving everything to it, because, like you said, if you're not putting everything into it, I feel like go do something else.
Absolutely. Luke, at this time, we will be calling it a night.
Okay.
I just want to take this moment just to say thank you one more time for everything you're doing. And just keep it up, my friend. And we got your back.
Definitely. We're always here, man.
Dom and Tom, we don't say man up. We don't say cowboy up. We say puppy up to the TV. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
So I'm going to pull you down underneath. Don't leave yet, because we want to talk to you in the back chat for just a moment, because we're going to get to BB3 TV. So we'll remove you, and Tom and I will end the show as we do. Luke, thank you.
Puppy up. Thank you,
man.
Tom.
That was awesome.
That was a great show.
I know I didn't talk a whole hell of a lot, which I'm sure anybody that's watching that normally watches our shows is like, what's wrong with Tom? Nothing's wrong with Tom. I was allowing our guests to explain everything. And then the couple times I did have questions, somebody else overspoke me, but that's okay. That's okay.
This was a great show and just such a great organization.
It's definitely
what we did. And of course, everyone, by all means, as we always say with BB3 TV, like, share, follow, subscribe, and by all means, enjoy. Tom, you have what's going on next with you?
What's going on next with me is I am, for my YouTube channel, I am starting tomorrow, working on a very lengthy process of editing a video that is unlike anything I've done on there before. I went to an old place here in far northeast Philadelphia that goes back to the 1800s, had a lot to do with the Underground Railroad and stuff. So the footage I took, I have to dub over, because the woman that was giving me the guided tour did not want her voice on there. Yeah. So I have a lot of editing to do with the video itself. I have a lot of editing to do with audio and adding audio and everything.
Beautiful. So that's always fun.
Lengthy process, but it's going to be a learning thing for me. So it's going to take a little while. But otherwise, the channel's still chugging. I'm going to be doing another video sometime this week. And you can find it down there. It's scrolling across.
Right there. Also,
and
Taryn, with the Paranormal Brew, we got her. Yes. She got a large shows coming up. We still got Witchwood. Tom Springer, whose show is coming up.
Today's Willow's birthday, actually.
Today's Willow's birthday.
Happy birthday, Willow.
Birthday from BB3 TV, Willow. My show, I should have a show next Thursday. Who knows anymore? We got so much going on. I just kind of do them when I want to do.
Just crazy all over.
And then, of course, Tom and Tom's World will be back here and there. We got a big game show coming up. I do want to say, with our friends Chaos, everyone go over to Scurry Face. Give them a like, share, follow. And they're doing the voting now, right?
I think they're going to be starting something.
If not, always check out scurryface.com and share out our friends there. They're a huge support, and they've always been here for us, and we'll do the same thing for them. Also, always. Chaos Unright Show. Check him out.
The Side Show.
The Side Show. And as we always put, the Skeptical Help Bar with our good friend Kenny Biddle on a Friday night. So check him out. Other than that, Tom, I want to say thank you for another good show, brother.
Yeah.
and
was
BB3
awesome.
TV. Luke,
Make sure you like the page if you haven't already.
that's right. Like, share.
We have a YouTube as well, and a Twitch now.
Twitch now. We are on Twitch, so
We have had one constant user or one constant Twitch viewer the entire time. So whoever
That's
you
awesome.
are, you are awesome.
You are the best. All right, guys. Thank you for tonight, and always like, share, follow, and subscribe. See you soon.
Night.
Night.